The Palomino mare froze against the rust-red ground, as if the desert itself had nailed her hooves in place. Kyle felt the tension ripple through her body, the tight draw of muscle, the low tremor that warned him something was wrong. But this was not the stillness of a nearby predator. This was something else. The horse refused to step forward. She would not turn back either. Her nostrils flared wide as she pulled the hot air into her lungs, testing the wind spilling out from a narrow split in the sandstone cliffs ahead. "Easy, Kyle," murmured in Apache, his voice calm and grounded. He had owned the mare for nearly 2 years, purchased at a cavalry auction in Rapid City, after the army abandoned several western posts. She had stood steady through thunder, through gunfire, through chaos. Yet now she planted her front hooves and released a sharp, uneasy whine caught between warning and fear. Kyle slid from the saddle in one smooth motion, his moccasins soundless against the D. The sun hammered down, white and unforgiving, turning the canyon walls the color of burning copper. It was late July of 1884, and heat shimmered in waves across the broken land of Red Mesa, South Dakota Territory. Kyle was 3 days into a scouting contract for the Deadwood to Buffalo Gap freight line, checking whether recent rains had damaged the canyon routes their wagons depended on. Until now, the trails had been clear, routine. He crouched and studied the ground. 3 sets of hoofprints, iron-shod horses led straight toward a cave entrance hidden behind juniper scrub and deep shadow. The edges were sharp, the soil still dark with moisture where morning dew had settled. Less than 2 hours old, boot prints ran alongside them. Men's boots, purposeful strides. The riders had dismounted and entered the cave, but there were no tracks leading back out. Smoke drifted faintly from the cave mouth. Someone had lit a fire inside. Kale reached back and checked the Winchester slung across his shoulders, a brass-framed model 1866, its action worn smooth from care and use. He had traded 2 weeks' wages for it. It had already saved his life twice. 14 rounds remained in the magazine. He eased one into the chamber with a muted metallic click, then approached the cave in a low crouch, using brush and scattered rock for cover. The Palomino followed without a lead, stopping at the cave entrance, as if posted there on guard. Her ears flicked forward. Kyle paused, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness beyond the harsh sunlight. The cave smelled of old stone and wood smoke and something else. Something human. Sweat. Filth. Fear. 2 small shapes pressed against the far wall, nearly 20 feet back, half hidden behind fallen rock. Too small to be adults. Kyle's breath caught. Children. The memory struck him without warning. He was 8 years old again, crouched in a similar cave in the Black Hills, hiding from soldiers who had come to take boys from his village for translation work. His mother had shoved him into the rocks and whispered, "Run if they find you." Then she led the soldiers away from his hiding place. Kyle had stayed silent for 2 days before his uncle found him. His mother was arrested and held for 3 months before she was released. He never forgot the taste of that fear, dry, metallic, like sucking on a coin. These children knew that taste. He saw it in the way they held themselves stiff and unmoving, like prey, frozen in the hope the hunter would pass. Kyle took 3 slow steps into the cave's threshold, letting the light silhouette him while keeping his hands visible. The children flinched, pressing tighter against the stone. One was older, maybe 13, gripping a sharp rock like a weapon. The younger one, perhaps 11, clung to her sister's arm, eyes wide and feral. They wore only torn cotton chemises, undergarments meant to be worn beneath dresses. The fabric was filthy, stained with dirt and dried blood at the hems. Their feet were bare and blistered. Their hair hung in tangled mats past their shoulders. They looked like trapped coyotes, cornered ready to bite or bolt the instant an opening appeared. Kyle stopped. He leaned the rifle carefully against the cave wall, close enough to reach, far enough that the girls could not grab it. Then he unhooked the leather waterskin from his belt, pulled the cork free with his teeth, and held it out at arm's length. "Drink," he said in English, carefully enunciated. The word hovered in the smoky air. Neither girl moved. The older one's knuckles whitened around the rock. The younger whimpered the sound barely audible, but sharp enough to cut the silence. Kyle set the water skin on the ground between them. He stepped back slowly, hands open at his sides, and waited. His legs ached from hours in the saddle, but he did not shift. Patience was survival. His father had taught him that before soldiers killed him, at the Powder River fight in 1876. Patience, and knowing how to read fear in others. The girls were shaking with fear, not of Cale himself, but of what he stood for. Another grown man, another unknown, another chance at pain. Half a minute passed, then a full one, heavy and unmoving. The older girl whispered something to the younger, too low for Cale to catch. Suddenly she lunged forward faster than he expected, grabbed the water skin and scrambled back to the wall. She pressed it to her sister's lips first. The younger girl drank in wild gulps. Water spilled down her chin, darkening the front of her chemise. She choked, coughed, kept drinking anyway. The older girl pulled the skin back, tipped it to her own mouth, and drank while keeping her eyes locked on Kyle. Watching, measuring, waiting for him to move. He did not. When the water skin was half gone, the older girl lowered it and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her voice came out raw, scraped thin by thirst and screaming. "Are you going to hurt us?" "No. They told us someone would come. They said if we ran, someone would catch us and take us back." Her jaw shook as she asked, "Who told you that?" "The man with the yellow scarf. He calls himself Flint Rourke." She swallowed hard. "He smiles all the time. Even when he—" She stopped forcing the words down. "Even when he hurts people." Cale's hands clenched at his sides. He made himself relax them. "I'm not taking you back," he said. "I'm getting you out." "Why?" The question came sharp, stripped bare of trust. Cale met her eyes, gray and storm-dark, and spoke without softening the truth. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." "I won't make that mistake again," the younger girl whispered. "Liddy, I'm scared." "Liddy." The older one pulled the water skin to her chest and edged closer just enough for Cale to see the bruises on her arms and the rope burns circling her wrists. "We ran from the mine. Lightning Ridge," she said. "They kept us in the sheds, made us sort rock 12 hours a day, sometimes more. There was a woman," she continued, "Ruth Mayfield, a widow in the cookhouse. She stole something for us." "What did she steal?" Cale asked. "A book," Liddy said. "She said it was proof. She said if we got it to the law, they'd have to stop." "Stop what?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Selling us." The words slid through Kyle like a cold wind, even in the suffocating heat of the cave. He had heard the rumors muttered in saloons, half-drunk freight hands talking about missing children, about Eastern orphan trains turning into something darker. He had always taken them for exaggeration, frontier talk. Looking at these girls, at their hollow faces and haunted eyes, he knew those rumors were only shadows of something far worse. "Where's the book?" he asked. Liddy crawled to the corner of the cave, reached behind a flat stone and pulled out a canvas-wrapped bundle. She hesitated, then brought it to Kyle, stopping just beyond arm's reach. He took it carefully and unwrapped it. A ledger. Black leather cover. Pages ruled in neat inked columns, freight marks, symbols for cargo, and destinations, dates stretching back 4 years. Names. Children's names. Dozens of them, listed like inventory. Beside each name, a dollar amount. Notes written in tight, hurried script, placed Chicago, transferred St. Louis, paid in full Denver. Cale's stomach twisted. This was not adoption. This was bookkeeping for human merchandise. Behind the girls, scratched into the cave wall in red charcoal, were the words Mesa G, with an arrow pointing toward the freight road leading back to Buffalo Gap. Kyle said quietly, "Who's that?" "That's what the workers call him," Liddy answered. "The boss. He owns part of the mine and the freight company. His real name is Bram Hargrove." Cale knew the name. Hargrove was powerful in the territory, ran freight mining interests, a gold watch chain, and a habit of paying his guns in gold coin when he wanted loyalty. People said he was ruthless but fair. Cale corrected that judgment in his mind. Ruthless, yes. Fair, no, Liddy said. We've been hiding here 2 days. We ran when Ruth gave us the ledger, but they're looking for us. Flint Rourke and his men. They'll come back. As if answering her words, the Palomino snorted a sharp warning. Cale moved low to the cave entrance and looked out. Far off, dust lifted against the pale blue sky. 3 riders were tearing along the canyon floor. 5 minutes out, maybe less. Even from this distance, the yellow bandanas at their throats burned bright as warning flags. At the front rode Flint Rourke, his white teeth flashing in the sun as he grinned. Kyle grabbed the ledger, wrapped it fast, and stuffed it beneath his shirt, the leather warm against his chest. He turned to the girls. "Can you ride?" Liddy gave a shaky nod. "A little. We used to." She didn't finish the sentence. "Then we move. Now. Stay close to me." He helped her onto the Palomino's back first, then lifted Wren light as dry kindling to sit behind her sister. The mare shifted under the weight, but didn't spook. Cale took the reins and led them out the back of the cave, where sandstone had sloped into a dry wash, a seasonal riverbed, deep and narrow, carved by flash floods. It offered both cover and an exit. They moved fast, but not recklessly. Running would stir dust, and dust was a signal. The wash curled through the canyon walls, rising high on either side. The air turned cooler in the shadows, the ground softer beneath the horses' hooves. Kyle threw a glance over his shoulder. The riders had reached the cave mouth. Flint Rourke's voice rang out, bouncing between the canyon walls, warped by distance but unmistakable. "They were here, tracks are fresh." Ahead the wash narrowed. Cale spotted a dark hollow beneath a rock ledge, just deep enough for 2 small bodies. He halted, lifted the girls down, and pressed them into the shelter. Liddy clung to Wren, both of them trembling. "Don't move," Cale said low. "Don't make a sound. I'll lead them off." "What if they catch you?" Liddy whispered. "They won't." He handed her the waterskin, mounted the Palomino, and rode back up the wash toward its wider mouth. He positioned himself at a bend where he'd have both a clean shot and decent cover behind a boulder. The Winchester felt solid in his grip. Flint showed first astride a bay gelding flanked by 2 more riders. One was young, barely 20, eyes darting. The other was older, leathery-faced, and chewing tobacco. All 3 had rifles slung. Flint reined in when he saw Cale, that same damn grin stretching across his face. Well, now didn't expect to see an Apache scout playing nursemaid. His tone was casual, like he was discussing cattle prices. "Heard you took honest work, Kyle." "Guess I heard wrong." Kyle didn't answer. He just racked around into the Winchester, letting the metal-on-metal click carry. Flint raised a hand, still smiling. "Take it easy. No need for all that. We're just here to collect what's ours. That ledger you're hiding under your shirt belongs to Mr. Hargrove. Company property. He'd like it back. No harm done. No questions asked. Just hand it over and you ride out of here clean." "No." That grin twitched only a little, but enough. "You're making a mistake, friend. Bram Hargrove don't take kindly to thieves." "This ain't theft," Cale said flatly. "It's evidence." Flint laughed, the kind of laugh a man forces when he feels the ground shifting under him. The others joined in, awkwardly. "Evidence of what business dealings Hargrove runs a clean outfit. Those girls signed contracts same as anybody else. Children can't sign contracts. Their guardians did. All legal. You got no right to interfere." Kyle shifted his aim, angling the rifle to the dirt just in front of Flint's horse. "Turn around." Leave. The grin fell off Flint's face. His hand crept toward the pistol on his hip. Can't do that. Cale fired. The shot cracked through the canyon. The bullet kicked up sand 6 inches from Flint's stirrup. The gelding reared, nearly unseating him. Flint cursed and clung to the saddle horn. The other men jerked their rifles upward, but they were too far for pistol work, and Kyle had cover. Next one won't miss, Cale said low and deadly. Flint got his mount under control, face red with fury and sunburn. For a second, Cale thought he might press forward anyway, pride riding harder than good sense. But Flint spat into the dirt, yanked his reins, and turned. Fine, we'll wait. He signaled to the others and they pulled back 50 yards, taking cover beneath an overhang where they could watch the wash's mouth without exposing themselves. Son's climbing scout Flint called over his shoulder, "Let's see how long you last out here with 2 brats and 1 waterskin. We got time. We got gear. And we got orders." They settled in like it was a siege. Kyle returned to the girls. Liddy looked pale, her hands trembling. Wren's tear tracks ran like clean streaks through the dirt on her cheeks. Cowell dropped to one knee beside the girls. "We need to move. There's another way through this canyon. Narrow cut leads to a seep where bighorns come to drink. Shade too. We'll rest there. Can you walk?" Liddy looked down at Wren's feet, bloody torn, raw as fresh meat, and then at her own. "We'll try. That's all I ask." He tore strips from his sweat-soaked cotton shirt and wrapped their feet the best he could, binding the cloth tight to shield the blisters from the stone. Liddy bit her lip but didn't make a sound. Wren whimpered and Liddy pulled her close, whispering soft. "We're gonna be okay," she told her sister. Cale heard it, the fragile hope clinging to the edge of her voice. She was trying to convince herself just as much. They started walking. The slot canyon was narrow and cool, its walls so tight Kyle could touch both sides if he stretched out his arms. The palomino followed close behind, filling the passage like a living barricade. Wren stumbled often and Liddy half carried, her teeth clenched against the pain in her own feet. Cale offered to carry Wren, but the girls flinched back, so he let it go. Trust didn't come quick. Half a mile in the canyon widened into a stone basin ringed with crimson cliffs. A dark streak ran down the wall, water seeping from a hairline crack. Not a flow, just a steady drip. But it was enough. Kyle cupped his hands under it, let the cold water gather, and brought it to Wren's lips first. She drank, then gagged, then vomited into the sand. Liddy held her hair, murmuring softly. Kyle waited patient, and then offered more. This time Wren kept it down. Liddy drank next. Kyle refilled the waterskin. It took 10 minutes, the seep was slow. From his saddlebag, Kyle pulled out strips of dried venison. Tough, salty jerky. He handed it over. The girls ate slow, their bellies, too empty to take much at once. Kyle didn't eat. They needed it more. By noon, the heat was climbing. The canyon bowl turned into a furnace, even in the shadows. Kyle climbed the rocks and scanned the ridge line. Movement. 2 riders. They were sweeping the high ground, riding parallel to the canyon below. Hadn't found the seep yet, but they were getting close. Kale slid back down quiet. The girls were huddled beneath a narrow overhang, drawn into what little shade was left. Liddy looked up at him. "Are they close enough?" He nodded to the shadows stretching across the basin. "We'll rest until dusk. Then we move. It'll be cooler, easier to cover our tracks." "Where are we going?" Liddy asked. "Buffalo Gap," Kyle said. "There's law there, a sheriff of maybe a federal marshal passing through." He trailed off. "You said you had a sister. Is she there, Eliza?" Liddy whispered. "I don't know. It's been 4 years. She might have left. She might think we're dead." "If she's there," Kyle said, "we'll find her." Wren murmured, "I don't remember her face." Liddy pulled her in gently. She had dark hair, brown eyes. "She used to sing to us at night, Mockingbird." Wren said softly, She sang about the mockingbird. That's right, Liddy whispered. Kyle looked away, giving them space for the memories and for the ache they carried. He checked his ammunition, 30 rounds left for the Winchester +6 in the Colt on his hip. Enough for a fight if it came to one, though he prayed it wouldn't. Noise drew eyes, and he had no idea how many men Hargrove might send. As the sun dropped toward the canyon rim, casting long slashes of gold and black across the rocks, Kyle gathered dry juniper twigs and lit a small fire barely enough to warm his hands. It burned clean, no smoke. He toasted cornmeal in his tin cup, mixed it with a few drops of water until it turned thick like paste. He gave it all to the girls. They ate slow fingers, scooping every bite like it was gold. Liddy looked up. "Why are you helping us?" she'd asked before. Maybe the answer had changed. Kyle fed a twig into the flame, watching it curl to ash. "When I was a boy, soldiers came to our camp. Said they needed boys to help translate. Took 3 of us." His voice stayed steady. "I escaped after 2 weeks. Ran through country I didn't know, no water, no food. Stumbled across a farm. White man saw me, raised his rifle. Ran me off like I was vermin." Kyle paused, jaw clenched against the old burn of thirst, the pain of steps that nearly ended him. "I think about that man sometimes. He had a choice. He could have helped. He didn't." He met Liddy's eyes across the firelight. "I chose different." Liddy gave a slow nod. Wren leaned against her eyelids, fluttering shut despite the fear still tangled deep in her bones. "She's safe," Liddy whispered. "Wren. She's the one I worry over most. She's been through—" Her voice faltered. She looked down, things no child should have to endure. "You both have," Kyle said softly. "Yeah, but I'm older. I remember before." Her mouth tightened. "Before Van Mercer sold us. Before the mine. Before the sheds. Before the men and the—" She stopped again, pressing her lips shut against words she couldn't speak. Kyle didn't press. Some stories needed silence more than answers. As dusk swallowed the sky, voices drifted from above. Kyle raised his hand, silent command. The girls froze breath, caught in their throats. He pressed himself against the canyon wall, listening. "If we don't find that ledger, Hargrove's gonna skin us alive," one of the men growled. His voice carried sharp in the stillness. "Every name in that book is proof," another said. "Goldie'll handle it," came Flint Rourke's voice, casual as ever. "He's got the sheriff in his vest pocket. And he's got help. Fella came into town a few weeks back. Keeps quiet. But Goldie says he's got reason to keep those kids shut up. Who no clue. Hargrove don't share names unless you're paid to know. But whoever he is, he gets things done. Cut the clinic's water, left threats. Works quiet." Cale's jaw tightened. So someone in Buffalo Gap was playing inside man for Bram Hargrove. Someone local. Someone the girls might know on sight. The voices faded as the men moved down the trail. Cale waited 15 minutes before whispering, "We go. Now. Stay behind me. Step where I step." They moved through the night, Cale guiding them along old game paths he'd traveled before. The moon 3/4 full threw just enough light to steer clear of pitfalls. The girls stumbled, often exhaustion digging into their bones. But neither one complained. Liddy supported Wren when her knees buckled. Cale walked ahead the Palomino, trailing close, her body shielding them from the wind's bite. Near midnight, they paused. Kyle showed Liddy how to tilt the canteen into the cold night air, catching dew against the metal. A few drops, but enough to ease dry mouths. He showed Wren how to read coyote howls, the rhythm, the pitch, the way the land bent their calls to tell you if they were hunting or just talking. "You know a lot," Wren said, her voice barely a breath. "I've lived out here most of my life," Cale replied. "Out here. You learn fast or you die slow. Are we gonna die?" Cale looked her straight in the eyes. "No, I promise." Promises were fragile things in the West. But Ren needed hope more than truth right now. Liddy met his gaze across her sister's head. Something passed between them, silent understanding, heavy as stone. A coyote yipped from the ridge above. Closer. The palomino stepped forward unbidden and lowered her head to Ren's shoulder. Ren hesitated, then reached up to touch the mare's soft muzzle. The animal didn't pull away. "She likes you," Kyle said. "What's her name?" "She doesn't have one," he shrugged. "I just call her Horse." Liddy smiled, Kyle's first glimpse of anything close to light in her face. "That's not very imaginative. I'm a scout, not a poet." They rested an hour longer, then moved on. By the time dawn touched the horizon, the land had changed less canyon, more prairie open, and golden beneath a pale sky. In the distance, Buffalo Gap stirred. Smoke curled from chimney tops. Freight wagons rolled down Main Street, mule whips cracking as drivers barked orders, the sound carrying across the flatlands. Kyle kept them to the southern edge where fewer eyes would notice. Buffalo Gap wasn't big, maybe 200 folks year-round. More when miners drifted down from Lightning Ridge, or ranchers drove herds toward the railhead east of town. The town itself was a patchwork of adobe and weather-worn timber. The main drag held a telegraph station, an assay office, a feed store, the Long Shadow Saloon. And Dr. Silas Boone's clinic, a narrow two-story, with a crooked tin roof and peeling white paint. Out front, a woman swept the wooden steps. Her movements were sure practiced. She wore a faded blue dress. Her dark hair was tied back with a simple ribbon. Her face was lean-lined by sun and sorrow. Kyle watched her pause and stretch, the kind of motion born of long days, bent over a needle. Even from 50 feet off, he could see the calluses on her hands. Liddy gasped beside him. "That's her! That's Mara," Liddy whispered. Before Kale could stop her, Liddy slipped off the palomino and bolted toward the clinic. Ren stumbling after her on blistered feet. Mara Holt looked up at the sound of footsteps, turned and froze. The broom tumbled from her hands and clattered across the steps. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Liddy stopped short, just 10 feet away, trembling. For a breath, she stood still as stone, like she feared the moment would vanish if she moved too fast. "Mara," her voice cracked under the weight of it. Mara's face broke, shattered into shock and something deeper. She rushed down the steps and fell to her knees, in the dust, grabbing both girls into her arms with a cry that tore through the morning air, half sob, half wail. She clung to them so tightly they could barely breathe, her whole frame shaking as if her bones remembered 4 years of loss. "You're alive," she gasped. "You're alive, you're real. You're here." Ren broke down sobbing, burying her face in Mara's neck. Liddy cried silently, her shoulders hitching with each breath. Mara touched their faces, their tangled hair, their hands like she needed to confirm they were flesh and not ghosts. A gray-haired man stepped into the doorway of the clinic. Dr. Silas Boone, late 60s. Eyes heavy with years of war plague and too many funerals. He took in the scene with one look and barked, "Inside. Now! Before half the town starts gawking." Mara rose with the girls in her arms, guiding them up the steps, holding them up on blistered feet. Kyle tied the palomino to the rail and followed them through the door. Inside, the air smelled of carbolic soap and dried herbs. A pot-bellied stove gave off low heat in the corner. Despite the summer, Dr. Boone kept broth simmering, always ready for the next fever or famine to knock. He ladled steaming broth into 2 tin cups and handed them to the girls. "Slow sips," he said. "Your bellies ain't ready for much." The girls obeyed, careful and quiet. Mara sat beside them at the worn table, one hand wrapped tight around Liddy's shoulder, the other holding Ren's little fingers. She didn't dare let go, like if she blinked, they might vanish again. Her eyes turned to Kyle, red and wet, but burning with that fierce fire he'd seen before. "Who did this?" she asked. Kyle pulled the ledger from inside his shirt and laid it down on the table. Men who run freight like it's livestock. Who think children are just cargo. Dr. Boone opened the ledger. His face darkened with every page he turned. He stopped at one. His finger trembled on the ink. This is a bill of sale. This is trafficking. Selling children like cattle. Mara leaned in. Her breath caught. Written in clean, steady handwriting, there it was, Ricardo Pike, her stepfather's signature, dated August 14th, 1880. Beside it, Marion Hart, age 9, $120. Phoebe Hart, age 7, $80. Payment received in full. The floor beneath her tilted. Mara gripped the table's edge knuckles white. He sold them, she whispered. That bastard looked me in the eye, and he sold them for $200. Dr. Boone placed a steady hand on her shoulder. We'll take this to the law. Careful, Kyle warned. I heard things last night. The sheriff's in it. And someone else. Someone Merrick trusts hiding in plain sight. Trace Givens, Boone said grimly. Sheriff Bitter Sam. That tracks. He's greedy. He's got debts. But who else, Mara asked. Liddy spoke up, voice still raspy. There was a man. He came to the mine sometimes. We only saw him once real quick, but he spoke with Hargrove in the office. We couldn't hear what they said, but Goldie treated him different, like he mattered. He had a limp, stiff on his left leg. A limp, Cale repeated, committing it to memory. We're gonna need allies, he said. People we trust. No questions. May Stroud, Boone said without hesitation. Schoolteacher. Smart. Doesn't bend for anyone. Jeb Maddox, over at Brown Bear Crossing, he added. Good man. Honest. Trades fair with every soul that comes through. There's others, Mara said, her voice steadying. But what we need most is a federal marshal. Shadow Lake's got one, she added. Holt. He's the real deal. Then we wire him, Boone said. But we do it smart. If Givens is involved, he's got someone watching that telegraph office. They spent the morning laying down their plan. May Stroud arrived first, a strong-willed woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a plain gray frock, spectacles perched on her nose, and a backbone made of iron. One look at the girls, one glance at the ledger, and her eyes hardened into something fierce. We'll have to hide them, May said without hesitation. There's a back room in the schoolhouse, storage space with a barred window and a lockable door. I can keep 'em there during the day. Teach them, keep 'em busy. If anyone starts asking questions, I'll say I'm tutoring some new students. Next came Jeb Maddox, a sunburned farmer pushing 50 who'd caught wind of the morning commotion and rode into town to see if Silas Boone needed help. When he saw the ledger and when he heard Liddy's account of the wagons hauling children like crates, his lined face turned cold as winter rock. I've seen those wagons, Jeb said, voice low. Never gave him a second thought. I should have. You're here now, Mara told him, quiet but firm. That's what matters. They each took on a role. May would protect and hide the girls. Dr. Silas Boone would document the physical evidence, bruises, burns, signs of malnourishment, and forced labor. Jeb would ride out and quietly spread the word. Among folks he trusted, build a quiet ring of support. And Mara and Kyle would make their move to the telegraph office. It was time to call the law from Shadow Lake. Be careful, Doctor, Boone warned them. If someone in this town's already working with Hargrove, they'll be watching for moves like this. Mara nodded. She slipped upstairs to her small room above the clinic and returned in a darker blue dress with deep side pockets. Kyle noticed the shift in her gait, more deliberate now, and then he saw the weight beneath her skirts. She'd armed herself. Smart woman. They walked to the telegraph office together, eyes peeled, watching every corner and rooftop. The office sat near the center of Main Street, marked by a faded Western Union sign and a dusty glass window looking out onto the road. Inside, a young man with nervous fingers and a thin mustache glanced up from his desk. Noah Briggs, the German-born telegraph operator. Miss Holt. He greeted, his accent still clinging to the old world. What can I help with? I need to wire Marshal Holt in. Shadow Lake, Mara said, her tone all business. It's urgent. Noah's hands shook slightly as he pulled out his message pad. Of course. What's the message? Mara dictated, slow and clear. Federal Marshal Holt, Shadow Lake. Evidence uncovered: men kidnapping and selling children in Buffalo Gap and Lightning Ridge. Multiple victims. Request immediate assistance. Mara Holt, care of Dr. Boone's clinic. Noah scribbled quickly, then looked up, pale. This is a serious charge. It's not a charge, Kyle said from where he stood by the door, scanning the street. It's the truth. Noah swallowed hard and nodded. He moved to the key and began tapping it out. The crisp metallic clicks echoed loud in the small office, each one striking like a bullet. Mara stared out the window, heart racing, half expecting the door to crash open any second. The message finished. Noah turned toward her. Sent. Marshal should receive it within the hour. Thank you, Mara said. Please, don't say a word. Not yet. I won't, Noah said, voice dropping to a whisper. My sister. Back in Germany before we came here. Something similar happened to her. I know what this kind of evil smells like. You can count on me. They left fast, taking a different path back toward the clinic. On the walk, Kyle noticed things he didn't like: a man loitering in the alley across from the telegraph office, eyes too still. Another figure on a rooftop, hammer in hand, pretending to fix shingles. But he wasn't watching the roof. He was watching Main Street. Flint Rourke's men. Or maybe someone from Bram Hargrove's payroll. The noose was tightening. That afternoon, Mara was hanging laundry out back when she heard it, glass shattering. She ran around front. 3 water barrels, precious lifelines in this August heat, had been split wide open. The ground was soaked with loss. Water ran through the dirt like blood. Dr. Boone came rushing out. Who would Mara spotted the knife first? Stuck deep in one of the barrels, pinning a scrap of paper. The message was written in crude block letters: stop talking or start bleeding. She pulled it loose and brought it to Cale and Dr. Boone. Her hands were steady, but her eyes held the fire of a woman who knew what fear was and chose to stand anyway. They're trying to scare us, she said. Are they succeeding? Boone asked gently. No, but they all knew it was a lie. Mara was terrified. For herself. For her sisters. For everyone now tangled in this quiet rebellion. But fear wasn't enough to stop her. That night she opened her sewing basket and froze. Someone had left a coil of barbed wire inside, sharp enough to slice fabric. Or flesh. A threat without words, but loud as gunfire to those who understood its meaning. She brought it to the clinic that evening, laying it on the table in front of the others as they gathered again. Whoever's behind this, Kyle said, knows your habits. Where you work. Where you store your supplies. This ain't random fear-mongering. It's precision. The inside man. May said sharply. The one Liddy remembered. The one with the limp. Cale nodded. We need to find out who he is. Someone new in town. Someone who moves around quiet but hasn't made many friends yet. There's a handful of drifters been hanging around, Jeb offered. Prospectors, gamblers, men claiming to be looking for work. Could be any of them. We'll keep watch for that, limp Silas Boone said, then turned to the girls, his voice kind. Liddy Wren. If either of you see someone who matches the man from the mine, you find one of us. Right away. No talking. No getting close. Just come get us. Both girls nodded, solemn as stone. That night, Cale climbed up to the roof of the clinic with his Winchester and settled in to keep watch. Around midnight, Mara brought him coffee, 2 tin cups, one in each hand, climbing the ladder without a word. She sat beside him, careful not to cast a silhouette against the moonlit sky. Do you think we'll win this? She asked quietly. Winning and surviving ain't always the same thing. That's not really an answer. No, Kyle said. It's not. He paused before adding, I think if you're willing to stand and fight, you got a chance. Most folks, they don't. They turn their heads. Pretend it's not their fight. You didn't. I failed them for 4 years. You searched for 4 years, she said. That's not failure. Mara blinked fast, chasing back tears. She wouldn't cry. Not now. Not with the storm still ahead. Tell me about your family. Kyle was quiet a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice came low and far away, like he was recounting someone else's tale. My father was gunned down in a skirmish with soldiers. I was 6. My mother raised me and my sister until the army came for the Black Hills. Said there was gold. Shoved us onto a reservation. His jaw clenched. My sister didn't make it through that first winter. Fever swept through the camp. Too many mouths, not enough medicine. My mother, she grieved herself to death the spring after. I left after that. I was 14. I'm sorry, Mara whispered. So am I. But sorrow don't rewrite the past. It just teaches you what's worth guarding in the future. They sat there in silence, not touching, but close, sharing the warmth of coffee and the unspoken weight of what they'd both lost. Below Buffalo Gap lay restless in the dark. Streets empty, but eyes still watching. Your sisters, Cale, said they've got steel in them. They survive because they're like you, stubborn. Mara managed a tired smile. That's not a compliment where I come from. It is where I come from. Their eyes met in the night, and something passed between them. Not love, not yet, but the shape of it. The beginning of trust. A recognition between two people, carved by hardship into something fierce. The moment broke when the palomino snorted softly from the stable out back. Kyle tensed, then relaxed. Just a barn cat prowling the hay. Mara finished her coffee, climbed back down, and left him to his watch. She lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, thinking about the fight ahead, thinking about the man on the roof guarding them all, about how strange it felt to trust again, after so many years of carrying everything alone. Sleep came eventually, thin and uneasy. The next morning, Silas Boone stopped at the general store for medical supplies. While browsing for antiseptic, his eyes caught on a man thumbing through bottles of whiskey. Middle-aged, trail-worn clothes, hat pulled low. He stepped up to the counter and Boone noticed it, the limp. His left leg dragging stiff like an old wound, never healed right. Boone paid for his things and left fast. Back at the clinic, he found Cale, Mara, and May gathered around the kitchen table. I saw him, Boone said. Man with a limp. Down at the general store buying whiskey. Kept his head down. Didn't look familiar. Which means he ain't a local. Could be our inside man, Cale said. Or just another drifter. We need to know for sure, Mara said. She turned to Liddy. Do you think you could recognize him? From a safe distance, Liddy hesitated, swallowed hard, then nodded. That afternoon, Liddy and May walked to the general store under the pretense of picking up school supplies. He was there again. Same man, same limp. This time he was buying tobacco. Liddy peeked through the shelves, heart slamming in her chest. She didn't need to see his face. The way he moved, shoulders tight, dragging that left leg, it was all she needed. Back at the clinic, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. It's him, she whispered. I'm sure. That's the man who came to Lightning Ridge. I remember the way he walked. How he held his shoulders. It's him. Now they had confirmation. Merrick's inside man wasn't just real. He was here, right in Buffalo Gap. But who was he really? And how could they fight a ghost who hadn't even given his real name? The answer came from an unlikely place. That evening, Jeb Maddox rode in from Brown Bear, crossing dust on his boots and news on his tongue. I asked around about newcomers, he said. Turns out there's a man staying over at the boarding house. Paid for 2 weeks up front. Keeps quiet. Goes by the name Jack Delaney. Says he's a prospector. But he's got soft hands, Jeb added. No dust. No blisters. Just drinks and watches. Delaney. Dr. Boone murmured. Never heard of him. But Mara's face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks. Jack. That was my stepfather's middle name. Her voice dropped. Van Mercer. He used to call himself Jack when he gambled, when he didn't want folks knowing who he really was. Silence spread across the room like a wildfire. Kyle's voice came low and sure. Mercer's here, hiding behind a fake name, playing prospector. He's the inside man. Mara's fists clenched tight. He came back. Sold my sisters 4 years ago, and now he's here to bury it. To silence anyone who might uncover what he did. And to protect Bram Hargrove's business, May added grimly. If Pike's name is in that ledger, he's just as deep in this as Merrick. They all knew they had to move carefully. Mercer still believed he was hidden. Still thought his cover was intact. That gave them a sliver of advantage, but it wouldn't last long. That night he made his move. Mara sat upstairs in her tiny room above the clinic sewing by lamplight, working on a torn shirt. She heard the creak of bootsteps on the stairs, too heavy for Silas Boone, too purposeful. Her hand slipped to the derringer, hidden in her sewing basket. Dr. Boone had given it to her days ago. The door exploded inward. Van Mercer stood there, pistol drawn, expression stone cold. The drunken act was gone. His eyes were clear now, sharp and cruel. Evening, Mara, he said. We need to talk. There's nothing left to say. Oh, I think there is, he said, stepping inside and kicking the door shut. You've been busy, stirring up trouble, making accusations. That ledger. Where is it safe? She said. Somewhere you'll never find. You always were stubborn, he said. Like your mother. She never knew when to stop asking questions either. Made my life hell. You killed her. It wasn't a question. It was truth spoken aloud. Mara had carried that suspicion for years, ever since the sudden fever and the way Mercer remarried within months. Now she knew. You can't prove it, Mercer sneered. Just like you won't prove anything now. Merrick's got the sheriff. Half the town council's bought. You're a seamstress with wild ideas. Those brats of yours should have stayed lost. Would have been easier on everyone. They're my sisters. They're merchandise, he snapped. $200. That's what I got for 'em. And I needed every damn penny. You destroyed their lives. Mercer shrugged. They're alive, ain't they? Work's good for kids. Builds character. Maybe one day they'll thank me. Mara stared at the man who once called himself her family and felt something settle in her chest. Not hate. Something colder. Resolve. You're not walking out of here with what you came for. Mercer raised his pistol. Then you're not walking out at all. But a floorboard creaked behind him. Too late. Kyle moved like smoke silent swift. He'd come up the back stairs. His hand caught Mercer's wrist and twisted hard. The pistol fired into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Mercer fought back stronger than he looked, but Kyle was faster. He tore the weapon free and slammed Mercer against the wall. The door burst open, as Dr. Boone charged in, followed by Jeb Maddox and Mateo Ruiz, a Mexican teamster who'd been keeping watch out front. Mercer's eyes darted between them. He knew the game had changed, and he'd just lost control. They tied Van Mercer to a chair in the clinic's back storage room, thick rope around his wrists anchored to the frame. Well, Dr. Silas Boone said, panting from the scuffle, looks like we've got our inside man. Mercer glared. No more drunken smirks, no more fake limp. The mask had slipped, and what was left behind was hard and venomous. You're all damn fools, he growled. Bram Hargrove will bury every last one of you. You have no idea how deep this runs. The sheriff, the mayor, the mine bosses, they're all in on it. You think you can stop that with a ledger? Maybe not, Mara said coolly. But we're sure as hell gonna try. They locked Mercer inside the windowless supply room where Boone usually stored bandages and tinctures. Jeb Maddox took first watch outside the door while the rest gathered to make a plan. Marshal Holt hadn't arrived yet, and Sheriff Trace Givens sure couldn't be trusted. "We need to draw Hargrove out," Cale said. "Force his hand before Mercer's disappearance tips him off." How May asked, arms crossed. "Tell him we'll trade," Mara said slowly, the idea building in her eyes. "Offer him the ledger in exchange for safe passage. He won't take the deal, but it'll flush him into the open." "He won't come alone," Jeb warned. "He'll ride heavy." "Good," Kyle said, voice calm as steel. "Let him bring his army. Let the whole town see him for what he is." They sent the message through Flint Rourke, still slinking around the Long Shadow saloon, sweating through his false grin, too deep in Hargrove's pocket to get out clean. Jeb approached him plain and firm. "Mara Holt wants a word. Ledger for safe passage. Noon tomorrow. Schoolhouse." Flint's grin twitched. "You're playing a dangerous hand. Goldie doesn't make deals." "Then let him ride out and say it to her face," Jeb said flatly. Flint mounted up and rode north toward Lightning Ridge. They spent the night preparing. There was no more room for mistakes. This was their one shot to force Merrick into the open, to make the town choose between decency and corruption. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was all they had. But morning didn't bring the gunfire they feared. It brought thunder. A real storm rolled in from the western hills, black-bellied clouds dragging the scent of rain and the bite of lightning. By mid-morning, fat drops fell hard, turning Buffalo Gap's dust streets into soup. Kyle studied the sky and muttered, "Flash flood kind of weather. If this keeps up, the canyon roads will wash out by midday." They huddled inside the schoolhouse waiting for Merrick. May had already moved the girls to Jeb's farm. If bullets flew, they didn't want the children anywhere near it. Inside were Cale, Mara, Dr. Boone, Jeb, Mateo Ruiz, and even Noah Briggs. The telegraph operator, his hands still shaking, but his spine holding firm. At 11:30, they came not down the road, but from every angle. Riders. 8 men armed and slick with rain. They encircled the schoolhouse like wolves. And leading them was Bram Hargrove himself. Fine black coat, gold watch chain, glinting against the stormlight, seated atop a black stallion too fine for mud like this. Beside him rode Sheriff Trace Givens, his shotgun across his lap and badge gleaming like a dare. Merrick pulled his horse to a stop out front and called out over the wind, "Miss Holt, I believe you've got something that belongs to me." Mara stepped onto the porch. Cale at her side, the ledger held in plain view. She didn't flinch. "Mr. Hargrove, I've got a book full of names, dates, payments. It documents the kidnapping and sale of children. All of it in your handwriting." "That's company property," Merrick said loud enough for his men to hear. "Stolen by runaways. I'm here to take it back." "It's evidence of a crime," Mara shot back. "And I intend to give it to the federal marshal." Givens leaned forward in his saddle, smug as a snake. "Marshal Holt won't be coming," he said. "I wired him this morning, told him everything's under control, no need for federal interference." Mara's stomach twisted. That was a lie. But it was slick and believable, and with no badge backing her, her case stood on sand. Merrick smiled, all charm and poison. "Let's make this easy," he said. "Hand me the ledger. You, the doctor, the scout, the old farmer, you all walk away. Take your brats. Start over someplace far from here." His voice darkened. "Or I take it by force, and people bleed." Mara didn't blink. "No," she said, loud and steady. "Not this time. Those children deserve justice." "Justice," Merrick laughed. "This is the frontier, Miss Holt. Justice ain't what's right. Justice is what you can enforce." He raised his arm, and his men lifted their rifles. "Wait!" A voice cut through the tension behind the schoolhouse. Flint Rourke rode into view, but the grin was gone from his face. He looked pale, rattled. "Goldie, We got a problem. Marshall's already here. Rain spit from the sky as every head turned. He came in on the east trail before the storm hit. He's at the clinic right now with 20 deputies. I saw him. Bram Hargrove's face darkened like thunder. You're lying. I ain't. I swear it. Marshall Holt knows everything. It was a bluff. They were gambling that Flint, spooked by Jeb's quiet warning, would turn on Hargrove to save his own hide. And maybe, just maybe, Marshall Holt was really out there. But as far as they knew, the man hadn't arrived. Maybe never would, if Trace Givens's message had gotten to him. First, there'd be no help coming at all. Then we finish this now. Hargrove snapped, voice like ice. He drew his pistol. Everyone inside that schoolhouse dies. We burn that ledger. We tell the marshal it was an accident. Lightning strike. Happens all the time in weather like this. His men moved forward. Mara and Kyle backed toward the doorway. No time for fear now, only reflex and grit. This was it, the breaking point. And then the sky opened wide. Rain didn't fall. It poured sheets of water crashing down so hard the world turned gray. Hargrove's horse reared in panic. Men shouted as thunder cracked overhead. Wind screamed. The storm had arrived in full fury. Cale grabbed Mara's arm and yelled over the chaos, the canyon. If they follow us into the wash, he didn't need to finish. Mara knew. Flash floods, the same flood that nearly killed the girls, might now save their lives or finish what Hargrove started. Run, Silas, Boone shouted. They scattered. Kyle and Mara sprinted for the Palomino. He slashed the reins free, vaulted into the saddle, and pulled Mara up behind him. She wrapped her arms tight around his waist, and they rode. Gunfire snapped behind them, wild blind useless. They rode hard toward Red Mesa, cutting through walls of rain, following the same twisting trails Kyle had taken with the girls. The ledger was still tucked inside Mara's dress, soaked now, but precious. The truth needed to survive. Behind them, Hargrove and his riders followed hungry to silence them for good. The Red Canyon walls rose around them like giants weeping. Water rushed into the gullies, streams, becoming rivers. Cale's jaw tightened. Climb, he yelled. He dismounted fast, pulling Mara with him, scrambling up a steep, narrow ledge 20 feet above the canyon floor. Just as they reached safety, it hit. The flood roared in a wall of brown, snarling water filled with broken branches, debris, and rage. It swallowed the canyon floor whole. Hargrove and his men saw it too late. Some turned back, riding hard for higher ground. But Hargrove, blinded by pride, by greed, kept going. His black horse made it halfway before the water dragged it down. The beast screamed. Hargrove clung to a slick boulder as the current surged around his chest. Help, he shrieked. Somebody help me. Nobody moved. This was the man who'd built his fortune on stolen children, who'd bribed, lied, and murdered to protect it. He deserved to drown. But Kyle couldn't let that happen, not even to him. He grabbed a rope from the Palomino's saddle, tied it to a gnarled juniper tree, and tossed the other end down. Grab it! Hargrove latched on with a death grip. Flint Rourke appeared beside Cale on the ledge and helped pull. Together, they hauled Hargrove from the torrent, soaked, coughing, shaking. His gold watch gone. His horse gone. His empire crumbling. He stared at Kyle's soaked hair, plastered to his face, and hissed through his teeth. Why? Why save me? Kyle's voice was low but firm. Because I'm not you. Hargrove's eyes darted, then spotted a pistol on the ground, dropped in the chaos. He lunged. Mara froze, but Flint moved faster. He snatched a rock and brought it down hard on Hargrove's wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. Hargrove howled. Flint pinned him down, his voice shaking. I'm done. You hear me? I'm done with this filth. I'm testifying, he said louder now. Names, ledgers, dates, everything. I'm buying back what little soul I've got left. The storm began to break. The rain eased to a heavy drizzle. The floodwaters still raged in the canyon below, but the sky lightened with the first gray light of dawn. And then they heard it hoofbeats. Riders coming in fast from the west, real lawmen, 30 in total. At their head, Marshal Holt. Noah Briggs had managed to get another wire out before the storm slammed in, and Holt had ridden hard through the night to reach Buffalo Gap in time. Justice had arrived. And this time it wasn't wearing a badge bought with gold. Turns out Flint's bluff had been the truth after all. Marshal Holt rode into the canyon just behind the rain, and what he saw told him everything. Bram Hargrove soaked and broken, his men scattered, and the ledger clenched in Mara Holt's steady hands. Miss Holt, the marshal called out, dismounting. "Seems you've had quite a morning." Marshal Mara said, her voice raw but steady. "You're a sight for sore eyes. Let's get everyone off this ridge and sort things out proper." They climbed down, slow, careful of the slick red rock and swollen flood path, leaving behind Hargrove's drowned stallion and whatever pride he had left. Back in Buffalo Gap, Sheriff Trace Givens tried to slip away unnoticed, but he didn't get far. Holt's deputies grabbed him at the edge of town. Van Mercer, still locked in the clinic storeroom, was dragged out in irons. And Flint Rourke, he told it all. Names, routes, money trails, the whole twisted network of human trafficking laid bare for the marshal to hear. He wasn't getting a pardon, he knew that, but he wanted to spit the poison out of his soul before the noose ever found his neck. The trial happened fast, impromptu, but legal, held in the meeting hall of the Ivory Tower Hotel. Half the town squeezed inside to witness it. Judge Gage Marlowe presided with a cool head and a sharp eye. One by one they gave testimony. Mara, Liddy, Wren, even Ruth Mayfield, brought in by Jeb Maddox from Lightning Ridge. Dr. Silas Boone read from medical notes. Flint spoke in a hoarse voice. The ledger was passed hand to hand, its neat columns and blood money figures speaking louder than any words. The verdict was swift. Bram Hargrove, 20 years in federal prison. Sheriff Trace Givens, 15 years, hard labor. Van Mercer, life behind bars, no parole. Flint Rourke, 10 years reduced for cooperation. When Mercer was let out in shackles, he turned to look at Mara one last time. She met his eyes with the calm of someone who no longer owed him anything. She said nothing. Outside reporters from Denver and Cheyenne scribbled in notebooks. The story would spread. There'd be questions in Washington. Reforms might come slow, but they would come. It wasn't justice for everyone, not for the years lost, not for the children still missing. But it was a beginning. In the quiet weeks that followed, Buffalo Gap began to mend. Ruth Mayfield, healed and steadied, again joined May Stroud at the schoolhouse, helping teach the younger ones. Liddy and Wren moved into Jeb Maddox's old farmhouse with Mara. Real beds, warm food, no more cold sheds or fear at night. They learned to laugh again, slowly, gently. Noah Briggs sent telegrams across the country tracking down children from the ledger. Some were found, some were not. The damage stretched far and the healing would take years. Kyle took a short scouting job west, then another. But each time he returned, he stayed longer. He taught Wren to ride. He helped Liddy plant a row of late summer corn. He mended the roof of Boone's clinic. He fixed May's fence. He stayed. And every evening he found himself on Mara's porch, sipping burnt coffee from a tin cup, watching the prairie turn gold beneath the setting sun. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Their hands rested close on the porch rail, never forced, never hidden. Just two souls quietly finding peace in the presence of one another. One evening near the tail end of September, with a chill in the breeze and the cottonwoods just beginning to turn, Liddy piped up. "Mara, are you and Cale courting?" Mara nearly dropped her sewing needle. "We're friends," she said too quick. Liddy just smiled. Friends who look at each other like that. Like what? Like you're each other's favorite thing in the whole world. Mara's cheeks burned, but she didn't deny it. That night when Kale came to the porch, she asked him straight, "What do you want?" "Not for tomorrow, I mean the future." He was quiet a long time. Then he said, "I want to stop wandering. I want somewhere that's mine." He looked at her. "I want to watch your sisters grow up safe. I want to sit here with you on cold winter nights and not have to leave when the sun rises." His voice dipped low. "I want you, if you'll have me." Her throat caught. "People will talk," she said. "Won't be easy." He smiled. "Nothing worth it ever is." She reached for his hand. "Then stay. Build a life here, with us." Their fingers laced together. Honest. Open. No shame. In November, the first snow came light and clean, dusting the prairie in white. Inside Mara's little farmhouse, Wren learned a new song while Boone played harmonica. May, Ruth, Jeb, Mateo, they were all there, a family. Not born of blood, but chosen in fire. Outside, Mara and Kyle stood on the porch, watching the snow drift past the fence line. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." He looked out across the land. "Thank you for letting me stay." In the barn, the palomino stirred softly, the same stubborn mare who refused to walk past that canyon entrance, and in doing so had uncovered everything. "What happens now?" Mara asked. Kyle squeezed her hand. "We live. We build. We protect what we've got." Behind them, Wren's laughter echoed through the wood walls, light, warm, free. Mara leaned into Kyle's side. He lowered his head, resting it gently atop hers. The past couldn't be undone. The scars would never fully fade. But here in this moment, they had each other. They had family. They had hope. And out here in the West, that was everything. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work,